The following program presents principles designed to promote good health and is not intended to take the place of personalized professional care. The opinions and ideas expressed are those of the speaker. Viewers are encouraged to draw their own conclusions about the information presented.
Hello and welcome to Health for a Lifetime. I'm your host, Don McIntosh. Today we're going to be talking about stress. Are you stressed out? What can you do about it? Joining us is Dr. Skip McCarty. He has done stress seminars for what, over 20 years now? Correct. And you pull together a lot of different elements when you look at this problem of stress. You've designed a seminar called Beyond Coping that can be used in communities or however people want to use it, but it's designed for that. And you're working with the Church Ministries Department of the General Conference, I think, here at 3ABN. They know all about that as well. They can get you in touch with it. But you look at these different keys, and you look at a stress tank as an overall, what would you say, an overall model. And let's catch us up to speed on this.
Okay, Don, the stress tank literally invites us to think of our lives as a tank, and we're subjected to stress every day of our lives. That's like this stress being poured into our tank, and if it fills up to the overflow point, where we get overloaded with stress, you got problems, you got all kinds of harm, physical illnesses, accident proneness, mental impairment, it affects relationships adversely, etc. Fortunately, there's a pressure relief valve on the tank, and that can drain stress to the safe levels. You can also, there's ways to close that pressure relief valve by alcohol and tobacco. Ways people generally rely on to help them with stress.
It doesn't really help.
Well, it does in a short term, very short, however, but it's damaging in the long run.
Okay.
And then, and the way that the pressure relief valve drains stress, prevents stress from building to the harmful point, is by 7 keys of stress management. There are 7 keys.
Prayer, relaxation, exercise, viewpoint, eating healthy, neighborly love, and time management. You're going to talk about eating healthy?
Today we want to talk about eating healthy.
Okay,
that's
great.
Right.
Well, let's get at it. What is the relationship between stress and what we eat?
Well, if we look at our stress management pyramid that we've developed, as you have at the bottom level, you have components that aren't as directly related to stress as at the top levels. The bottom 4 components to the stress management pyramid, these are the 7 keys. Again, they're just arranged in hierarchical order, moving upward, and to the most important at the very top. And you see that eating healthy comes down toward the bottom. But those bottom 4, you could arrange in any different configuration there. Some would put that up quite a bit higher, some nutritionists. But there's a relationship between stress and eating healthily. If you look at the 10 leading causes of death in the United States, 80% of the deaths in the United States are from these 10 leading causes.
Like heart disease, cancer, stroke.
That's right. And 4 of these, heart disease, cancer, and stroke, are all diet related. They account for 65% of the deaths in the United States, just those 3 alone. And they're all diet related. So diet is very important to stress. If you look at the others on that list,
unintentional injury.
You pick up another one. Diabetes is directly diet related, and as is atherosclerosis. So 5 of the 10 top reasons.
Even suicide, many more drinking or drugs, or something they ingest.
That's right. Accidents, suicide, cirrhosis are all as you say, alcohol related, and so 7 of the 10, really 8 of the 10 on that list are, as you say, what you ingest.
So, okay, how then do we eat to alleviate or to lessen our stress?
Well, it's a good question, and of course there are many ideas out there as to how we should eat to be healthy. And we're thinking about particularly relieving stress, because if you are under a lot of stress, if you're ill, then you can't handle stress as well. There's a direct relationship between illness and stress. Stress can create illness, but also illness keeps you from handling stress as well. So the first item on our list, we're going to make 3 suggestions. And the first is to eat the right kinds of food. All right. Very simple. Eat the right kinds of food.
And we'll talk maybe about what some of those are, perhaps.
Well, that's what we should do, I think.
Okay.
And there's all kinds of ideas as to what the right kinds of foods are. The world is filled with conflicting ideas of that. And for my seminar, I've chosen to rely on a very, one of the most prestigious reports ever produced in the history of the planet on nutrition. It was the Surgeon General's report on nutrition and health of 1988.
Okay.
Still a seminal study. 712 pages was the report, and it represented 4 years of research by 50 scientists over a period of 2,500 research studies that were studied. And
probably take about that long to read those. Okay.
I'm sure for most of us. And their conclusions were then reviewed by 200 nutritionists, and out of that they came up with 5 recommendations.
Okay.
5 recommendations, and that's
crystallize it from the 2,500 studies down to 5
simple recommendations.
Okay, what are those 5?
All right. Recommendation number 1 was to eat foods low in cholesterol and fat.
Okay. Cholesterol and fat. We all hear about cholesterol, how it's negative on us. It can lead to heart disease. It can lead to many other problems. And, you know, cholesterol, although it's necessary, it's something that we need to lessen.
Okay. And it's necessary because it has certain
cell
positive
walls,
functions.
Hormones, all those different kind of things we hear about that it's used.
Yeah.
And in fact, the liver makes it, so we know it has some use.
Yeah. In fact, the body makes all the cholesterol it needs.
Yeah.
So we don't need to ingest cholesterol.
And then the other thing you had there was fat as well.
Yes. Right.
And of course, the body needs fat too. Some people need more, some people need less. You can kind of tell by looking sometimes, although that's not really the most accurate thing. But certainly there is a place for fat, again, in positive ways in the body.
Absolutely. We need fat in our in our diet. We need fat in our body.
Yeah.
And it's recommended. Now, the cholesterol foods that contain cholesterol are only the animal products. You can't ingest cholesterol through vegetable products, except I understand coconut oil or something has some cholesterol.
Anything that has a face or a mother, we need to avoid. That's what some people say.
Anything has a face or a mother. Okay. Yeah.
Right. Of course, when we're talking about this, probably in America, you know, those that watch from around the world, they're going, boy, I wish I had something with cholesterol and fat in it, because many people around the world today are starving, and that causes stress too when you don't have any food. But certainly in an affluent society with overabundance, we want to lessen the amount of cholesterol and fat.
Right. Now, it's interesting that some people have high cholesterol who don't eat animal products. And they wonder how that's possible, because I've been told by nutritionists that when we eat high-fat diets, that our body actually makes more cholesterol in order to process that extra fat. So it does raise our cholesterol levels, even though we're not ingesting cholesterol from animal products. So we have to be careful not to eat too much fat.
Yeah, some people certainly do have that genetic predisposition to make high cholesterol, and that's another issue. I mean, that's a pretty big issue. So we need some fat, we need some cholesterol. How can we keep track of the amount of fat? What have you used, or what do you teach people in your stress management seminar on how to keep track of that?
Well, we're quite fortunate in this country. We have labels on products. And there's good books and materials available to help us understand how much fat is in certain products, but particularly in this country, labels will generally tell you when you go to the store and buy products how much fat there is in products. And the more processed it is, it tends to be higher in fat.
Foods as grown are usually less. Foods that are not as grown.
Correct.
If you eat a potato, it's not very much. If you eat a Pringle, it is.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
And the foods that are also, you have to watch the kinds of fats, because trans fats, which are fats that are processed fat, anything that says hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated oils in a product means it's been processed in such a way that it's much more harmful to the body than just the natural oils and natural fats.
Okay, so keeping track of those, watching your numbers with the fats, looking at cholesterol, making sure that's low, especially if you're in a society that's affluent like America. Mm-hmm. What's the second recommendation?
The second recommendation is to eat foods that are high in complex carbohydrates and fiber.
Okay. Foods high in complex carbohydrates and fiber.
Right. The Surgeon General's report went on to make the statement that the single most influential dietary change one can make to lower the risk of the diseases, heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, cancer, and so forth, the killer diseases, was to reduce the intake of high-fat foods and to increase the intake of foods high in complex carbohydrates and fiber.
So complex carbohydrates would be, foods that's grown again, not processed, to have an apple instead of apple juice, to have potato instead of
fruits, grains, vegetables.
Now, many times what they say is because of the fact that the body breaks that down slower, and over time it's not as, it's the difference between putting lighter fluid in your car versus gasoline. One will cause an explosion, the other will help you get down the road further.
Right. And now we've got a slide showing what happens to a potato.
Okay,
when you
you
refine a potato, going from just a basic potato on the one hand to these are the high complex carbohydrates and high fiber foods.
Grains, vegetables, legumes.
Okay. Yep. Here's what happens to a potato if you just bake it, you have 125 calories. If you French fry it, that goes up significantly.
530.
Yeah, almost 5 times.
Say that's about 70% fat too. French fries.
Okay.
Okay.
If you potato chip it, then you're up very high percentage fat, and you Pringles it. The Pringles Originals.
Oh, yes.
Then you're sky high. You're a refined city, so to speak.
Unfortunately, we like to hear good news about our bad habits, and you're not sharing that with us today.
10 times as much, 10 times as many calories, and those calories are from added fat in a potato when you go from just a baked potato to Pringles Original.
So what they say, the little quip is, the fat you eat is the fat you wear.
Okay. So
if you eat those things, you can assure yourself not only of health problems, but then what you're saying in your seminar is that there's nothing more stressful than having one of those 10 major killers.
That's right. The major killers of diseases that affect us: cancer, heart disease, stroke, diabetes.
Not only affects the people they affect, but also their family members, and what a great stress on society and communities and families and churches and everything else. We're talking with Dr. Skip McCarty. We're talking about stress, how we can get beyond just coping and thriving. It's an exciting seminar that has all the essential keys, and we're talking about diet today as it relates to stress. We hope that you can join us when we come back.
Have you found yourself wishing that you could shed a few pounds? Have you been on a diet for most of your life, but not found anything that will really keep the weight off? If you've answered yes to any of these questions, then we have a solution for you that works. Dr. Hans Deal and Dr. Eileen Leddington have written a marvelous booklet called Reversing Obesity Naturally, and we'd like to send it to you free of charge. Here's a medically sound approach successfully used by thousands who were able to eat more and lose weight permanently without feeling guilty or hungry through lifestyle medicine. Dr. Deal and Dr. Leddington have been featured on 3ABN, and in this booklet, they present a sensible approach to eating, nutrition, and lifestyle changes that can help you prevent heart disease, diabetes, and even cancer. Call or write today for your free copy of Reversing Obesity Naturally, and you could be on your way to a healthier, happier you. It's absolutely free of charge, so call or write today.
Welcome back. We're talking with Dr. Skip McCarty. We're talking about stress and foods that can help alleviate or further decrease our stress. We've talked about several different principles that can help us. We should eat foods that are low in cholesterol and fat. We should eat foods that are high in complex carbohydrates and fiber. And so what else can we learn about foods that can reduce our stress?
Well, I would like to just show you a couple of slides, Don, that have impacted significantly the way that I eat today.
Okay.
The first slide is just a typical diet.
Standard American diet, if you will.
A meal, a typical meal.
Okay.
And we have here we have a glass of whole milk, 80 calories, a baked potato, It's supposed to be clean, but without anything on it. But I couldn't find a clip art without something on the potato. So
okay.
Shows you what's in the
Typical
psyche of the, yeah.
It's got to be.
So it's 125 calories, 150 calories. And then those are not French fries. Those are carrot sticks there.
Okay, good.
And some broccoli, 25 each. And
you're impressing me
calories
with those two.
each. And,
okay.
And then I've got a lean steak there. I don't recommend this to people eating.
You don't eat meat yourself.
That's correct. Eating flesh foods,
okay.
but it's a
typical American diet
meal.
Okay.
And then you have a dinner roll, 60 calories, a salad, 15 calories, and an apple for supper. I shouldn't say that's typical American meal, but those are elements of that meal. And notice the total calories for that meal. You add them all up. It's a pretty good helping there.
575 calories.
575 calories. You could even have a second helping of most of that, and you'd be under 1,000 calories. And now, the next slide simply adds a little something to each of those items.
A little butter on the potato, I see.
You take the skim milk. I think I said that was whole milk before. It was skim milk before. You take the skim milk and make it whole milk, and you've doubled the number of calories from 80 to 160.
Some people would say cut that out altogether. Right, okay. What's the next one?
Yes, that's right. Okay, and you put some butter and maybe a little sour cream on the potato, and you go from 125 to 250 calories.
Ooh.
You put a pat of butter on your carrots there, you cook carrots, and you go from 25 to 50 calories. Same thing with the broccoli.
Toppings.
You marble that's right, just toppings. That's all we're doing. It's the same meal, basically.
Right.
And you marble the steak, which again, we're not recommending the flesh foods, but typical American meal. Marble the steak here, and you put some butter on the bun. You go from 60 to 120 calories.
A la mode for the pie.
That's apple pie a la mode. It looks like it's cherry pie actually, but I couldn't find again the clip art for an apple.
Okay.
But pie a la mode.
You knew my name was Macintosh probably. You wanted to go to cherries. Okay, good.
From 70 to 500 calories right there in one jump. And then you just put some
French, Italian, all the different nations.
No, we're talking about the good stuff, not the real low-cal stuff, but the good stuff.
All right.
On your salad there, some dressing, and you go from 15 to 80. So look at the total calories now.
Boy.
1,500 calories. You've tripled the number of calories. And what have you added?
Just some toppings.
All you've added is toppings. You've just added fat.
So what you're saying is stoppings to the toppings. Is that what you're saying?
Stoppings to the toppings? Not a bad formula. But, I saw that slide
all right.
in a program. I was running a program with a nutritionist who was making these presentations and put those two slides up. And I went home. I used to eat more like the first slide without the steak there. But I buttered my bread pretty heavily, and the more the better. And I didn't like 2% milk; it was too watery. And
you want something you can almost bite into.
I started slowly cutting down on the amount of butter I was putting on my bread and the amount of toppings I was putting on my food. And over a period of time, it didn't happen immediately, but over a period of several years, I got to the place I actually enjoy my bread without any butter on it at all. It just somehow the bread tastes better now.
So it can be done. It doesn't have to be stress producing to be topping reducing. Is that a good way to put it?
That's the way I meant to say it.
Is that how you meant to? So you actually can have a good time. The foods that do have a certain taste because of all these toppings, they can taste good without those. We just have to re-educate ourselves to not have the fat. By the way, I did hear a statistic once that it takes about 90 days to retrain your body to not like the fat taste or have to be dependent on it. Okay. So it's about 3 months, I suppose. That you would have to just discipline yourself. Okay.
But when we realize that we are adding stress on our lives, putting stress on our bodies to be ingesting these foods, the high-fat diet, then it helps us if we just keep reminding ourselves about that. And you know what? You can do it almost painlessly by just cutting down little by little by little. You don't have to stop eating all chips, but you just don't buy one bag instead of 2 bags next time you go to the store, and don't go to the store for more until you would have gone, and to just start cutting back a little at a time until you've significantly change the way you eat if you're right now eating a high-fat, low-fiber diet.
You were talking about these recommendations from the Surgeon General. The first one you talked about was decrease cholesterol and fat, increase complex carbohydrate and fiber, and anything else that they've talked about.
Well, they've summed up, yes, they've also, the next item was to eat foods low in salt.
Okay.
That was their next recommendation, eat foods low in salt.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a stress researcher, Dr. Ronald Nathan, and several other authors that wrote regarding research related to salt
and stress.
And stress. And they wrote, research with animals suggests salt may be a stress-inducing chemical. Salt increases the number of brain cell receptors for stress-triggering hormones and seem to promote irritability. So there is some research basis for the connection between a high salt diet and stress as well. So cutting back in salt.
And that's not the only research I've heard on that. That's very interesting. You know, I guess after somebody has a bag of chips, you better watch out. They might get irritated with it. It's so high in salt and different things. But I certainly have heard other studies that certainly related to the mood and the sensorium of an individual or the stress. And, well, you know, it makes sense. You know, you've probably seen this in your research as well or what you've read. If your blood sugar gets low or high or you're out of balance, you, number one, get stressed out and you start stressing other people out. So certainly that makes sense. That's fascinating, really, about the salt. Anything else?
Yes, number 4 on their list was to avoid the restriction, avoid or restrict the use of alcohol or tobacco. Tobacco actually wasn't part of this particular study, but from other reports of Surgeon General have included it here, but particularly alcohol. Avoid or restrict the use of alcohol as another recommendation that they had.
Well, that makes good sense. I mean, you know, speaking as a former emergency room nurse, we saw 70% of the people that came in from any accident was alcohol related, and talk about the stress that brought not only to the individual but to every part of society. You know, World Health Organization now says you really shouldn't even drink any. So good research. Okay, anything else from the Surgeon General? Well,
they've summed up their recommendations in the food pyramid that you see all over the place today.
Oh, okay.
And this was the result of their research. That's where this food pyramid ultimately came from. And as most of us know by now, they suggest loading up on the whole grains and pastas and so forth, whole grain items on the bottom, the cereals, the breads, pastas, whole grain pastas. And then as you move up the top, also eat liberally of vegetables and fruits, and then more sparingly. The farther you get up the top on this particular pyramid, you actually reduce your intake of these items. Now,
meat groups, milk groups, and of course this is for the general public. And
that's right. And
but even
vegetarian.
Even in the vegetarian one, the more processed the food, the more paltry the serving.
That's exactly right. I think our next slide will show the vegetarian pyramid.
Okay.
And the vegetarian pyramid, again, you load up on the whole grains,
complex
the breads,
carbohydrates, and all those different things you mentioned, and fibers.
Vegetables and the fruits. And then as you move up, here we're more processed now again. And legumes could be up in the vegetarian pyramid in order to kind of be a counterpart to the regular food pyramid, has legumes up in the meat alternative group. But legumes could also be included down in the whole grain section. They can be included down there. So legumes could go either way. Nuts up in that area, and then your soy products. The more refined products, as you say, as you move toward the top, you want to
certainly, I guess the further you move up that pyramid, you know, what I've heard is if you're in real trouble, the top part of the pyramid needs to be very, very sparingly to try and reverse things and getting down to the lower part of the pyramid.
Right.
What about water? How much water is sufficient?
Okay, water is important, and from what I've read on this, the average person needs 6 to 8, or maybe 8 glasses. Yeah, 6 to 8 glasses of 6 to 8 ounces each glass
a day.
And that's if you're working harder or it's hot and you're perspiring more, you'll need more. And that you can't totally trust your
sense
thirst
of thirst.
Yes.
Right. Especially when you get older or younger.
We need more. And our brains operate better. We think more clearly. We're more alert when we have water. So it's a good thing to see that in our age, people are carrying around these bottles of water.
This reminds me, I think I might take a drink right now.
That's a healthy fad kind of in our age today, and it's popular to be carrying around bottles of water and sipping on the water through the day, but you want to make sure you get plenty. If you drink a couple large glasses when you wake up in the morning, it gets the day off to a really good start, and and then you just take some water throughout the day.
Okay, we know what the right kind of foods are, but what's the next step would we talk about?
The next step would be to eat foods in the right amounts.
Okay, right amounts.
In the right amounts, that's correct. And you can tell right amounts by weight as one indicator. If you eat too much food, you have sleep loss. It's sometimes harder to get to sleep, particularly if you eat a lot of food at night. So
right kinds of foods, the right amounts.
Okay. Right amounts. And drowsy, if you get real drowsy just after you eat a meal, oftentimes that's an indicator of too much. And if you feel too full, that generally means you've eaten too much. And we generally suggest eat a large breakfast. And in fact, there's research done in the Breslow study we've talked about before, Breslow research, showing that people who eat a large breakfast, who eat breakfast regularly, have a longer lifespan.
And it's also the number one way to lose weight, they say. If you eat a large breakfast, it's really related to that.
Okay, because you tend to eat the fruits and the whole grains more in the breakfast.
And then usually if you eat
healthier foods
in the morning, you don't eat at night, which is when the weight really gets added.
Okay.
The next thing is large breakfast.
The final thing is to eat foods at the right times.
Right times.
And the right times are it's very simple. It's meal times. When you eat snack foods, or if you eat between meals, generally you're eating snack foods, the higher refined foods, the higher calorie foods, less vitamins and nutrients in those foods.
And that's a real stressor on your body too, because your digestive system is always working, and if you don't give it a break, you got real problems.
That's correct. So it's a very simple formula. Eat the right kinds of foods. It's really simple if you eat foods in the right amounts. Eat foods that are
helpful,
that are as grown. Foods as grown, basically.
Right amounts, right time.
Eat liberally of those foods in the right amounts at the right time.
Okay, so this is just one of the keys. We've talked about stress and many other different things. This is one of the keys. It's a foundational key. It's important as it relates to stress. We've been talking.
It's not the most important thing for stress management, but it's
important.
It's an important component.
We've been talking with Dr. Skip McCarty. He has developed a seminar that's a fascinating seminar. It's called Stress Beyond Coping. It deals with different keys that you can put in place to prevent, avoid, reverse stressful situations. I don't know if you could ever prevent stress, but it does deal in a very practical way with all different elements. And you can get more information about that seminar by contacting us here at 3ABN or the Church Ministries Department at the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. We're glad that you've joined us for this seminar. We hope that as a result, you will have health that lasts for a lifetime.